Thanks for joining us. You're watching this special coverage on President Barack Obama's India visit. Obama comes calling. I'm Harsha Subramaniam. US President Barack Obama arrives in India in what is touted as a historic visit as the chief guest on India's Republic Day. The White House has called this a seminal moment for relations between India and the United States. Is this a new dawn in Indo-US relations? To discuss this, I have with me a power-packed panel. Diane Farrell from US IBC, James Gibney, columnist at Bloomberg View, Manjeet Kripalani of Gateway House, Lalit Man Singh, former Foreign Secretary, N. Chandrasekharan, CEO of Tata Consultancy Services, Krishna Kumar Natarajan of Mindtree, Tiagar Tyagarajan of Genpact, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw of Biocon, and David Lynch of Bloomberg News. I'm going to begin this conversation with David Lynch of Bloomberg Government. He's been tracking President Obama for a while. David, thank you so much for joining in. Take us through what's on his agenda. He's got a packed schedule, hasn't he?
Well, it's a mix of the ceremonial and the substantive. The president arrives early Sunday morning. There'll be a ceremonial wreath laying at the Gandhi Memorial, meetings then with Prime Minister Modi and statements for the press, a state dinner later that evening. The next day is really the highlight, I think, of the visit. It'll be the president's participation as chief guest at the Republic Day parade, the first U.S. president to be invited to do that, the first U.S. president to come to India twice during his term of office. So I think this really is a signal of an increasingly close relationship between the U.S. and India. There'll also be a CEO summit where the president will meet with business leaders from both the U.S. and India, try to do what he can to develop closer trade and commercial ties. And then on Tuesday, there'll be a presidential speech on his vision for the relationship, and he and the First Lady then will cap the visit with a tour of the Taj Mahal before heading home.
Well, you've got a packed time, David, but what does the president hope to achieve from this trip? What does America really want?
There's sort of specific issues that he hopes to make progress on with his counterpart, and then there's the broader relationship in general. So some of the specific sticking points that have been on the table for some time, certainly implementation of the civil nuclear agreement, which was a landmark deal back in 2005, but has not yet been fully put into place and is hung up now on an Indian law that establishes liability that would affect the suppliers of the nuclear hardware. So I think that's a big issue. I don't think there's great optimism that it can be finally resolved on this trip, but I think the two sides are hoping to get some ideas on the table and maybe make some progress. Also, climate change, renewable energy. This is a big area that's important to the president, an area where I think India traditionally has been reluctant to see hard limits put in place for fear that it would crimp their development, given the stage of development that India is at this point. But there may well be prospects where the two countries can pool their expertise and their intellectual resources and maybe make some breakthroughs in clean energy. Defense cooperation. There's a 10-year framework deal that needs to be replaced, and I think both sides are eager to find some defense technology where they can collaborate and co-produce. So those are sort of the specific issues. But beyond that, I think what's really going on is, President Obama on a number of his foreign trips has tried to plant the seeds of, and certainly India is poised to be a major power, the third largest economy already in Asia. As soon as next year, if all goes well, as the Chinese growth rate begins to come down, India will be the fastest growing major economy. That's a big deal. India is going to play an increasingly important role both in terms of geopolitics and economics going forward. And so it's probably a smart move for the U.S. to do everything it can to develop a better relationship with Delhi.
All right, David, we leave it there. We let you go. You've got a packed day as well. David Lynch, our Bloomberg News reporter, traveling from Washington. to track this trip of President Obama's. We'll, of course, be getting back to David through the next couple of days as he tracks President Obama's visit. But let's kickstart this conversation. Is this a dawn in Indo-US, a new dawn in Indo-US relations? As I mentioned, I've got a power-packed panel with me. Diane Farrell from USIBC, James Gibney from Bloomberg View, Manjeet Kripalani of Gateway House, Lalit Mansingh, former Foreign Secretary. We'll also be joined by N. Chandrasekharan of TCS, Krishna Kumar Natarajan of Mindtree, also the head of NASSCOM, Tiger Tyagarajan of Genpact, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw of Biocon. Thank you all for joining in. Manjeet, let me begin this conversation with you. This is historic. You know, we've been talking about this for a while now. 2 times the US president comes at an event like the Republic Day. What does this mean? And does this signify our relationships getting closer?
Yes, and in fact, you know, we have a new prime minister, we have a new government, and he is clearly embarking on a new path. For the first time, having President Obama at the Republic Day parade means that we are not afraid to show the world that we are a friend of the United States. For all these years, that has been sort of in the closet. And there's been good people-to-people relations, but there haven't been this kind of friendly government relations. Clearly, there is an engagement and an affinity between Mr. Modi and Mr. Obama, and that is going to be now on full display.
Sure.
President Obama preponed his State of the Union address. And these are all significant.
Just to be here.
Just to be here.
All right.
And these are all very significant. So I think, yes, we will see a new dawn, but a sort of coming out of India. The US has already come out and talked about how it wants to be friends with India. India has never really come out. This is our coming out party in some sense.
Sure. Let me get an American view on this. Diane Farrell of USIBC. Diane, you know, this is, as I said, very rich in symbolism. Is Washington getting closer to New Delhi? Manjeet believes that this is our moment.
Oh, I think very definitely. There are a number of historical firsts. This is the first United States president to be the chief guest at Republic Day. This is also the first time that a sitting U.S. president has returned to India. And there's no question that considering that the president only hosted the prime minister in late September, and now here we are in late January with a second visit between the two leaders. Not only is it symbolic, I think it's actually a material expression of commitment to the relationship, both from a strategic standpoint, including national security issues, but also from a trade and commercial standpoint.
James Gibney, is there material significance to these ties getting closer? Is Washington's relationship getting better with New Delhi?
I think it definitely indicates they're getting closer. You know, I think that after Prime Minister Modi's visit and Obama's earlier visit in 2010, I mean, this is a real sign that the tempo of relations is increasing. The one thing that gave me a little pause, however, was that President Obama did not mention India once in his State of the Union speech. I like to think that was just an oversight on the part of overworked speechwriters rather than a reflection of the importance that the U.S. places on the relationship.
Diane, let's get to the business end of the trip. You know, Prime Minister Modi wants to attract foreign investment into India. He's recently launched a very ambitious Make in India campaign. We've had quite a bit of noise asking global companies, inviting them to manufacture in India. What do American companies want from India and its government?
Well, it's really quite simple. It's been the same sort of watchwords that companies use wherever they choose to invest. Companies are looking for predictability, transparency, and consistency. They need to see an ecosystem that is going to provide the kind of assurances that companies need so that they can make the long-term commitment. We talk a lot about ease of doing business. The Prime Minister has certainly talked about the fact that it's his desire to see India improve its standing on the ease of doing business scale that the World Bank issues each year. And so it's going to be those kinds of broad macro philosophical points that will be behind any number of the different initiatives that the Prime Minister has introduced, including Make in India.
Manjeet, you know, we've seen American companies have a historical track record of dealing with Indian companies here. What is it that they materially want changed? You know, we've got a new government, the new approaches, new governance.
Yes.
What do they want changed?
As Diane said, they need predictability. So what we need to do is we need tax stability. We need to get the Land Acquisition Act fixed so that companies can acquire land and start creating big operations that can create jobs. But most importantly, we need entrepreneurship. American companies are really good about entrepreneurship. There are huge numbers of new technologies coming out just now that we can get from the US and from US companies. Indian IT companies have really not been here for a long time. But American IT companies have. They know India very well. They can contribute to innovation and entrepreneurship, but they need some kind of stability. They managed very well under the past governments, but now they need to take a leap forward.
Let me get Dan Farrell once again. The question I have, Dan, is has the Modi government done enough to convince American companies, American multinationals, to invest more money into India, or are they still in a wait and watch mode on those promised reforms?
Well, certainly investors will always look for more. And so I think the question, has he done enough, is probably companies are still waiting. It's, of course, still early in the Prime Minister's tenure. But they have seen tangible evidence of the commitment that the Prime Minister, that his government has made. So things like the formation of the Interministerial Committee to troubleshoot on behalf of stuck projects for companies. In the case of the United States, we're very pleased to be working with the DIPP and the Secretary Amitabh Kant. Companies have already had meetings with the Secretary, with his staff, and the staff is doing the kind of follow-up on some of these troubleshooting problems that are actually resulting in resolution. Because in some cases, not every problem is as complex as requiring a parliamentary solution or, a major action taken by the government. Sometimes these are just help at various levels, whether it's permitting issues, whether it's a plant is up but there are traffic issues surrounding the plant. But just the fact that companies have a go-to location, a go-to individual to help to troubleshoot makes a big difference. And it's sending, I think, a very important signal to the global investment community.
One area of concern has been with the technology sector, James. You've looked at it fairly closely. Indian technology companies that, in a sense, pioneered outsourcing were at some point seen as taking away American jobs. Has that subsided? Has that concern subsided? Do American companies see Indian companies as partners in a sense?
It's interesting the way you mentioned that, because one thing that Obama did mention in his speech was, he talked about the wave of outsourcing, and he didn't talk about it in a positive sense. I guess the good news is that he didn't mention India in that context. I do think that the United States continues to be focused on, what it can do to lift the living standards of its people, and part of that is, providing them with good jobs. I do think that the U.S. is going to be very intent on partnering with India and having U.S. companies partner with Indian companies to, develop the kinds of partnerships that will enable them to, provide benefits for both their peoples. I think that, you've seen, for example, this big investment by an American solar company to build solar panels in India, and I think that's the kind of thing that the U.S. is going to want to promote. I don't think you're going to see much quick progress on immigration reform and providing the H-1B visas that Indian tech companies understandably want.
Sure.
I do think, however, that with the Republicans controlling both houses of Congress, it's more likely that you'll get terms that India finds more favorable than if the Democratic Party to retain control of both houses of Congress.
All right. On that note, I'm going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to continue this conversation, focus more on the new areas of cooperation between the two countries, and more importantly, the issue of strategic affairs. We're going to come back on the special debate on the Welcome back. You're watching the special coverage on President Obama's visit with me. I've got a power-packed panel. Dan Farrell of USIBC, James Gibney at Bloomberg View, Manjeet Kripalani of Gateway House, Lalit Man Singh of former Foreign Secretary are all with us. We'll soon be joined by N. Chandrasekharan from TCS, Krishna Kumar Natarajan of Mindtree, Tiger Tyagarajan from Genpact, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw from Biocon. We were talking about areas of cooperation. Manjeet, one thing that struck me is the way both the heads of state have been communicating this cooperation. You saw when Prime Minister Modi went to the United States, a joint op-ed in the Washington Post. This time, both of them are going to be doing a radio, a Mann Ki Baat on radio. What do you make of it? Has this been done before?
No, this has not been done before, and it is significant because it shows that both leaders are now walking in tandem. They're doing things jointly. Previously in India, you had Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was really the recipient of President Bush's beneficence. There wasn't any sort of walking with him. Now you've got two heads of state from two big democratic countries working together. I think we're going to see a lot of A, equality in the relationship, and B, both people taking joint responsibility for what needs to be done on global issues.
And this is not restricted by traditional protocol, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think they both approved it, and Mr. Modi, as you know, is an individual. He takes decisions on his own, and they become what needs to be done. I think that in some sense he is also pulling this relationship forward, only because he's a man in a hurry, and he's at the beginning of his term. Mr. Obama's at the end of his term. There's a lot that the two can learn from each other, and Mr. Modi can help President Obama leave a legacy.
Sure. Let me talk about what American companies have been asking for, and then let me get you back into this conversation. We've heard from a couple of Indian business leaders that American companies are getting preferential treatment from the Modi government in clearing projects and so on. Has the USIBC and your clients, have you seen a significant improvement in government response in investment proposals? Are American companies getting priority? Do you see single window clearance taking place?
Well, certainly single window clearance is an aspirational goal as it relates to some projects, but the fact that the government is talking about a commitment to it, very good. I think, though, it's very important to also say, I don't think the government is necessarily, or that there's any evidence that the government is in some way favoring foreign multinationals versus domestic investors. Clearly, this government understands that to grow the economy, this is about making sure that companies already on the ground, Indian companies as well as global multinationals, have a level playing field, have an ability to compete for projects, have an ability to provide the kind of securities, whether it's payment security based upon partnerships, whether or not, again, it's predictability as it relates to getting a business up and running, making sure that taxes adhere to global norms so that, again, it gets back to the transparency, the consistency, predictability ideas. So, again, companies are definitely responding. Companies are seeing small improvements. Companies are responding to a decision, for example, to go the ordinance route on insurance FDI, which has long been kind of a bellwether to see about India's seriousness of purpose, especially when it comes to long-term financing for infrastructure projects. It shows a commitment from the government that they intend to continue to pursue legislation in the parliament until it's finally adopted. All of these are very, very good, very positive signals.
Lalit Mansingh, let me bring you into this conversation. India has opened up restrictions on foreign capital in areas such as defense, and we were talking about how defense can be a big opportunity. US, of course, is the biggest supplier of weapons to us. Do you see greater partnerships? Do you expect any specific announcement in this regard?
Well, correction, it is not the major defense supplier to India, not yet, but on its way to becoming one of the major suppliers. What we have seen is a remarkable increase from virtual zero level to $10 billion worth of defense purchases in the last decade or so. And with the new joint production, joint development programs proposed by the US, I think the US is on its way to becoming the major defense technology partner. Raising the level of equity in defense production to 49% and in exceptional cases to even 100% is going to be a big incentive for the American companies. Why India is interested? Because for defense technology, I think there is no country with such advanced technology as the United States.
Let me sort of expand this to what this means for the region. James, does America see India's rise as a threat, and how does it see India in the context of China, we are a stable democratic force. Does it see it as a counterbalancing force against China?
I don't think that the U.S. is focused so much on the rise of the Indian economy as a threat. I think that we've got our opportunity glasses on. I think U.S. businesses and U.S. policymakers really want to build up the economic relationship with India. They want to find ways that they can work together to overcome the obstacles that they faced in the past, and they want to find ways to work together on issues that affect the economy and the environment, like climate change. So I think that, especially because the U.S. economy is doing better now, I think the people are less focused on the economic threat that the rise of India might pose. I think it's more really a challenge in how you negotiate the rules of trade and things like that. So it's a much more positive view than that. As to balancing with China, I think again, the U.S. has to sort of keep both countries in its field of vision at all times, in the sense that the U.S. has a much bigger economic relationship with China than it has with India. It also has a huge strategic relationship in the Asia-Pacific region that depends on reaching some kind of, cohabitation with China's growing aspirations. So, on the one hand, India and the U.S. are democracies. They share a strong interest in, promoting their way of governance and also promoting their economies. But on the other hand, they can't afford to, outright try to contain China. That wouldn't be a very propitious basis on which to move forward.
This is a strategic relationship, all right, but Lalit Mansingh, place this in context for us. Does Washington see this in the context of Pakistan and China?
Well, remember, it's a strategic partnership. It is not confined to single issues. Of course, international terrorism is a principal issue, and we have been facing international terrorism. There is terrorism emanating from neighboring Pakistan, instability in Afghanistan, all that is a factor. But don't forget that there are security threats in the Indian Ocean area, and therefore there is a common concern by both the countries on the totality of the security threats facing both countries in this entire region.
Sure. This is, Manjeet, this is about, strategic affairs, and this is something that's constantly dialogues going on bilaterally as well.
Yes.
But areas of cooperation, we've spoken about what American companies want so far. What can be the new areas of cooperation? We were talking about solar, for instance, nuclear, defense, what else?
Yes. I think the areas of climate change and energy are the big areas. You will see new technologies coming up. The US has to help India with giving them the technologies or helping them co-create the technologies that can work. Because India can be innovative. China has created solar panels, but I don't know whether they've innovated it as much as India can innovate. The technologies that India co-creates with the US, then will be applicable to other parts of the world which are like us. Africa is still to be brought into the global supply chain, into the business world. South America is doing a lot, but co-creating with the United States has to be done. The US can create for technologies it already has. Our paper on the US-India relationship, the $1 trillion by 2030, says that the US needs to do India-only licenses for these technologies, which are restrictive. It's a little bit like other countries have tried this and it works.
Sure.
So we need help in doing it. Technology in energy, which then leads to climate change, sustainability, is very important. The US should also, with the innovations, help India build its ecosystems, its innovation ecosystems. I mean, these are things the US is just great at. India has an affinity to it, and we can absorb it very fast.
Sure. So basically, climate change is one big new area where energy will be perhaps thrust for this trip. Lalit, same question to you, Lalit Mansingh. Newer areas of cooperation, we've spoken about defense, but what can be achieved from this trip? Any specific areas that you're expecting an announcement on?
Well, I think what Mr. Modi achieved during his trip in September to Washington was that he turned around the negative views of the US business community on India, which had been building up in the preceding 2 years. Now, having raised their level of confidence, he is now pushing for his major objectives here, which is to take India to higher rates of growth of, let's say, 8 to 10%. Now, this is where the American companies come in. They are the ones who have investable capital. They are the ones who have high technology. So I take it that Mr. Modi will attract American interest in his pet projects like, Digital India, bullet trains, smart cities, cleaning of the Ganga, and so on. A whole range of economic activity where we expect American companies to both invest and start production in. I am excluding the defense sector, which is also huge.
Sure.
Because that will largely be government to government.
All right, let me take another break on that note. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation, the significance of President Obama's visit. What does this mean for India? What does this mean for Indian businesses on the other side? Welcome back. You're watching this special coverage on President Obama's visit with me, Harsha Subramaniam. Will Obama's visit be a game-changing one? I'm in conversation with Dan Farrell of USIBC, James Gibney, columnist at Bloomberg View, Manjeet Kripalani of Gateway House, Lalit Mansingh, former Foreign Secretary. We're also now joined by a whole host of technology company CEOs, N. Chandrasekharan from TCS, Krishna Kumar Natarajan from Mindtree, and from NASSCOM, Tiger Tyagarajan from Genpact. We'll soon be joined by Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw from Biocon. Chandra, I will start this conversation on the technology side with you. This is a significant moment. We've been talking about how historic this is and so on. What are the new areas, opportunities for technology companies, business opportunities as both the countries get together?
It is indeed a real historic moment, President Obama's visit to India. I think the biggest opportunity, not only for India and the United States, but for the world, is the coming together of these two nations. Because the opportunity is very complementary. India has a lot to offer in terms of the market, in terms of the talent for the US, and US companies can play a big role. Not only in terms of investment, but also in terms of partnering with India, in terms of technology, in terms of a number of social issues. It's a big business opportunity, but also it's a big opportunity to make an impact on humankind. I think it couldn't have been better.
Tiger Tyagarajan, what's the business opportunity? What are the newer areas for technology industry? What could be game-changing?
Thank you for talking to me on the topic. My own view is that this is obviously a very historic visit. Not only is it the second time, which is probably the first time that a sitting president is visiting the country twice, but I think more importantly, it's a very symbolic visit to the extent that he's actually participating in the Republic Day celebrations. And as we all know, that is very symbolic. When two heads of states get together and spend time like this together, it's less about what gets done in terms of specifics there. It's setting the stage for businesses, for companies, for the governments to subsequently, before and after, work together to cooperate on a bunch of topics.
Chandra, do you see greater leeway in terms of transfer of talent? This has been an issue for the IT industry. As companies as nations start working with each other, do you think there will be relaxation on these visa hurdles and greater cooperation in these areas?
See, I think, the movement of people and labor reforms is fundamental in every market in the world. And everywhere we feel that the right talent, the availability of the right talent at the right place is the fundamental factor to be able to get things done. So I am very positive that the labor reforms will happen in every market and the visa rules will get eased. So it's a necessary thing, and I'm pretty confident that that's the way the world is moving.
Krishna Kumar Natarajan from Mindtree and NASSCOM also joins in on this conversation. KK, you know, the industry has been asking for this for a long time, right? What else can be a game changer? How long can we ask for access for people? There must be some other dimension to this relationship, isn't it?
Harsha, I think it's an incredibly exciting time, and in the State of the Union address, President Obama talked about the middle class economies. If in this visit he can identify a larger purpose of how both India and US can co-create, innovate together, to really innovate and deliver services to the middle class, and really help improve the way in which people live, then I think it becomes an incredibly exciting opportunity. I think the options out of it can translate into how do we really use alternate energy to improve the lives of people, how do you use new emerging technologies like digital to really deliver far better citizen services. And today I think the intellectual capital in India is so strong that it would make substantively great sense for US and India to collaborate together with the primary purpose of saying, how do we really make these middle class economies, how do global companies make money serving the 600 million middle class in India and the 200 plus million in US and, like Chandra said, probably the world.
Sure.
So I think there must be, if the president can use this visit to paint the picture of a larger purpose, I think that would certainly be a great outcome of this visit.
Sure.
Coupled with that,
Sure.
we talked about the movement of people.
Yeah.
To really help the whole collaborative environment to really accelerate innovation in this direction.
Right.
If you can get in efforts like maybe a one-year professional visa,
Yeah.
a visa like E3, I think that will greatly sort of negate the current environment about free movement of professionals.
There we go again for visas. All right, let me shift focus to a new challenge. Chandra, one challenge that we see is cyber security. Do you see this as an opportunity for the Indian IT industry to be offering solutions to American companies?
See, it's the toughest subject because everyone is grappling with it. And Indian talent in the technology space is just formidable, and we have a great opportunity, whether we create it as part of Indian companies or global companies, but Indian talent has a strong role to play in solving this problem. I think India and US coming together is another important aspect even in this dimension, because this is something that needs addressing and addressing holistically. I'm pretty much personally involved actively in the World Economic Forum on this subject. So many others are involved, and you know, this is the area in which the world needs to make a big movement forward.
Krishna Kumar Natarajan, you know, cybersecurity has been hogging the headlines all for the wrong reasons, preventing malware and so on. Is that something that you see Indian companies sort of partnering perhaps with the government? What's the area of opportunity really?
No, clearly, like Chandra said here, I think 1 + 1 can be made into 4, where the intellectual capital on cybersecurity and the depth of talent which is there in India can be effectively leveraged if we can create a platform, because this is again an issue which impacts the government, it impacts the common citizens, because if their data is under threat, then I think the whole mode in which the way in which digital services get adopted might be in question mark.
Right.
So I think if we can create an opportunity for companies, the government as well as global corporations together to have a common agenda in solving this, I think we can certainly accelerate the way in which people will gain confidence on the digital channels, which will lead to better efficiency, better productivity, and overall will drive the growth of economy.
Manjeet, you know, you're seeing two really different kinds of engagement on the technology side. On one hand, you've got the large guys, the TCS and the Infosys of the world, you know, acting as rather waiting for clients from the United States. The other piece you're seeing, and this is a very interesting one, is that you're seeing large companies like the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world looking to India for small startups, the intellectual space, which is going to be driving the agenda forward.
Well, I think clearly it's the American companies that are looking for startups, because what they are doing is they are fertilizing the ecosystem. And that's what India needs. We've got a large young population. We need the ecosystem to be fertilized. Our IT companies are terrific. Yes, I agree. But all their energies and their focus is overseas. They are not fertilizing the system at home. They should be starting venture funds. I'm sure some of them do it, but it's so small, it's insignificant. So they are looking at the world as a market. American companies are looking at us as a market. You know, very soon, I'm pretty sure the government is going to be giving out big digital contracts, our government, and American companies are going to get them because Indian companies are nowhere to be seen.
Krishna Kumar, would you agree? Are Indian companies not creating that ecosystem? Will American companies grab a piece of Indian government's contracts?
I wouldn't agree with that, Harsha, because really if you see the type of work which Indian companies have delivered both in automation and things, be it the TCS work in passport or the Infosys work in the income tax processing or Wipro's work in the state employment insurance, I must say the complexity of the solution, the extent to which it has really got to the grassroots is far higher than probably what has happened elsewhere in developed countries. And I think many people who don't believe in the capability and the experience which Indian companies bring in are going to be in for a big surprise. I would think most Indian companies would do substantively better than the large multinationals. And today I think we're seeing it in the marketplace, not just in the globe. In India we're seeing it.
Let me shift focus of this conversation, to company engagement. Chandra, Indian origin CEOs have enormous clout today in the global landscape. They'll run large multinational companies. Large companies like yours employ large number of Americans in their own corporations. Has the perception of Indian business changed among American companies?
I would say that the Indian companies and American companies work incredibly well together. I think all the companies we work with, we are strategic partners with many of them, and there is a lot of respect mutually, and they admire what we bring to the table, and we admire their partnership and the way they look at the future. So I think this is a historic moment and many things are coming together. I am really happy for India, happy for the United States, happy for the world.
Tyagarajan, has that nature of engagement changed? Are we on the same high table with the American corporations?
Over the last few years, I don't know. The way I would answer that is if you characterize the last 3 or 4 years, I would say we've had lots of ups and downs. Retrospective decision making has its big downs. We saw that in the tax regime. Inconsistency creates problems. We saw that in a number of decisions. And lack of decision making creates a problem, as I just said. So I would not characterize all of the last 4 or 5 years as being equal. I would say that the last 9 months, whatever period you take of the new government, there is renewed hope. There is hope that all the things we talked about in terms of decision making, the fact that there is a growth agenda, the fact that there is a majority in the government, then therefore decisions can be taken, I think is exciting a number of leaders in corporations, because that does mean that investments can progress, we can actually take decisions, we can actually do capital investments, do the hiring on both sides in order to progress the agenda. So real optimism, and on the back of that optimism, a visit like this with the stage and the platform of the visit, I think is a huge fillip to progress.
All right, I'm going to take a break on that note. When we come back in our last segment, we're going to address the new areas of cooperation and what can President Obama achieve in this trip on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching this special coverage on President Obama's visit. With me, Harsha Subramaniam. I've got a power pack panel with me. Will this visit be a game changer? Diane Farrell, USIBC, James Gibney, columnist at Bloomberg View, Manjeet Kripalani, Gateway House, Dalit Man Singh, former Foreign Secretary, all in with us. N. Chandrasekharan from TCS, Krishna Kumar Natarajan from Mindtree and NASSCOM, Tiger Tyagarajan from Genpact, and now Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw also joins in. Kiran Shaw, many thanks indeed for joining us. You know, we were talking about the nature of engagement between the two nations. From a pharmaceutical industry standpoint, what can be the new area of cooperation? We have seen the regulator in the United States take a not so kind view of Indian companies. Do you see that perception changing?
Well, I certainly think that this is an opportunity for us to correct a very wrong perception that the Indian pharmaceutical industry has unfortunately come under flak for. I think there are concerns around IP, compulsory licensing, quality issues. I think at least as far as IP and compulsory licensing is concerned, I think India has to basically stand its ground and come across as a very TRIPS compliant country. I think we must make sure that people know that we are not issuing frivolous compulsory licenses. I think we have to project the fact that we have a very strong and robust IP regime where we are not going to flaunt TRIPS legislation in the way it's being projected. I think there is enough case to be made that India and US are strategic and symbiotic partners when it comes to healthcare. India is certainly a very integral part of the US healthcare system, where we enjoy a huge aspect of the whole generics industry and generics reliance that the US has, and so on and so forth. But I think going beyond that, I think there is a very large opportunity to play on the Innovate in India strategy that the Prime Minister Modi has talked about, and of course the Make in India agenda that Prime Minister Modi is so keen to really showcase to the world. And I think US certainly is a country that has taken advantage of both. I think research services is a growing segment in India, and I certainly believe that manufacturing also has been a very strong focus for US pharmaceutical companies.
Sure.
So I think in all of these areas, I think we make a very important proposition to the US. I think I would also like to say that this is a very unique point in time where both nations are seeing a huge surge in terms of economic revival.
Right.
And I think there are many opportunities for us to collaborate and partner.
Right.
Starting from renewable energy and other aspects which I'm sure other panelists must have covered.
Sure. Krishna Kumar Natarajan, so far we were talking about what can Indian IT or IT industry or the pharmaceutical industry, for instance, get from the United States. What can IT do for America? What can we do for American government, for American companies, for their policies?
See, clearly when we talk about digital India and the emphasis which the Indian government is placing on that, I think there's a tremendous amount of depth and knowledge within Indian companies to really provide this back to the US government, where at the end of the day they'll meet their objectives of delivering citizenship services in a cost-effective and far more agile manner. So I think today that sort of technology, depth and capability is available within India, and this could be something which we could certainly take back. I think the number of other panelists have talked about how do we really innovate in some of the new and emerging areas, be it alternate energy, be it waste management, and clearly there are a lot of interesting startups doing leading edge work in these areas, and they're delivering solutions which are working in the most difficult environment at costs which are fractionally a cost of what it could cost in the US. So clearly in the whole vision which the president articulated in terms of how to improve the middle class economies and how to improve the lives of the middle class people, there can be many innovative solutions which are being developed by Indian companies which can be taken back to the US.
Kiran Shaw, we were talking about this just a short while ago. We are now seeing a very different type of engagement. You are seeing large American technology companies engage with small startups in your backyard in Bangalore. Do you see that kind of engagement increasing?
Absolutely. I think there is a lot of interest now in these small innovative startups. I think even in Bangalore, where I think the IT strength that we are seeing and the IT prowess that we have in Bangalore is seeing a large number of companies, even in the life sciences area, the biomedical area. I think there's a lot of focus now on genomics and big data, analytics in the life sciences area, all playing to this particular opportunity where, of course, US companies are really looking to these innovative companies in terms of helping them with their catering to their own needs in these areas. So I certainly believe that the startup culture is very rich and very rife in India, and I think the US interest is also growing in a very positive way. And I think this alone will actually help us to establish this very innovative quotient that was latent all this time, but which can be unleashed through a much better kind of interest and partnership between the two countries. Many of these startups, by the way, are receiving a lot of venture capital from US VCs. So I think that also kind of plays to the strength of both these countries.
Sure. Manjeet, every state or leaders visit like this has a certain hype. Even when Prime Minister Modi went to the United States, there was a lot of hype about it. But despite all the hype, you did see some concrete business take place. The WTO negotiations, for instance. There is obviously enough hype here as well. What can be concrete business this trip?
Well, I think, as we mentioned before, issues of climate change and energy, absolutely. President Obama will take concrete...
You see a deal happening?
Yeah, I think that he is going to look for something because he is in the last 2 years of his presidentship. He wants to leave a legacy. Clearly, he's done a deal with China. He will want to do something with India. And in terms of energy, he also wants to create a friendship in this part of the world that is really critical for the US. We look at great power plays, etc., etc. We need a friend. We need a powerful friend. And we should be ready to do deals, and we have to implement it. So yes, energy and climate change, absolutely, I think we'll see something. Defense, we will. But if we can start with innovation and co-creation of it, I think that will be helpful. In turn, Indian companies must also leverage their strength in the United States. They're all there. They're plugged into the guts of corporate America. They're trusted. Indian companies too must start investing in the US ecosystem and bring those ideas back home and within their own systems.
Sure. Last round of questioning. Lalit Mansingh, let me get you back in. Both President Obama and Prime Minister Modi are grassroots leaders, huge followings and so on. How much of this partnership is really based on the chemistry between these two leaders? Because both are, in a sense, going through complete uncharted territory of creating relationship between these two countries.
Well, yes and no. They come from similar backgrounds, from humble backgrounds, and certainly the chemistry has worked very well with the two of them. But let's not forget, this is not about the relationship between two individuals. It was between two nations, two states. Barack Obama is going to complete his term in 2 years' time. Mr. Modi plans to stay here for at least 10 years. So we are looking beyond the personal relationships, and we are looking at a strengthening of state-to-state, government-to-government, people-to-people relations.
All right. On that note, all of you, many thanks indeed for joining us on this special edition. James Gibney, Manjeet Kripalani, Tiger Tyagarajan, N. Chandrasekharan, Krishna Kumar Natarajan, Diane Farrell, Lalit Mansingh and Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. Many thanks indeed for joining us on this special debate on President Obama's visit. We'll of course be keeping a closer eye on the trip for the next couple of days, getting you special discussions and of course telling you what the significance of all of this is. If you have been, thank you so much for watching.